Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brothers and sisters. I hope you're doing well, inshallah. So today is going to be a video on the incident that occurred recently regarding a certain American influencer called Charlie Kirk, who was shot dead a few days ago. And yeah, I thought, based on my situation of engaging regularly with Turning Point, his organization, as well as my discussion just a few weeks ago where I was actually calling out Charlie Kirk quite heavily, I thought it'd be important to make this video. First of all, I wanted to mention that I've given it a bit of a delay because of multiple reasons. Firstly, my heavy workload, and secondly, because I thought it would, this was more the prominent reason, that I wanted to give it some time not to profit off a young man's passing. And yeah, I thought it's not appropriate to make the video immediately after. But yeah, first off, I want to come across and say I completely condemn this killing. It was awful. Senseless killing of a young man who was a father and a husband in the modern world. And it's it's just sad to see, especially hitting home a bit more, being a public figure who would speak and debate publicly about politics and religion, whether it be from the opposing side to what I believe in. Yes, he was the antithesis of my position, but nonetheless, it kind of helps relive your worst nightmare of what can happen to you when you're standing on principle and what you believe in. And I will give that to Charlie Kirk, the fact that he did, from what is visible, he did look like he lived what he preached, in the fact that he had 2 young children, he had a wife, he was married young, and he was living the life. And that is not something that you often see nowadays in the right wing. They are often, sad to say, hypocrites. For example, with with me, what you guys see publicly often is the debates I have in Speaker's Corner, and a lot of these Christian missionaries, they're not living what they preach. They're just, they're not married, they don't have children, they're just dating girlfriends. Like the majority of the Christian preachers I know, they have girlfriends. I'm not going to name them, but they're just living this liberal, postmodern life and not living to their Christian values. And that is something I'll give to Charlie Kirk. That was an admirable trait of his, that he did stand and practice what he preached. But yes, so, and of course, it's very sad to see a young father pass away, no matter what your beliefs are, and to see his young children, having to grow up without a father. That should distress any man, an individual. No children should have to go through that in today's world. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't want to touch too much on his negative traits, but I because of the circumstances, but I will. But we all are aware of what they are from his positions that he held. But what I do want to touch on is Turning Point UK, and I do, which was an offshoot of Turning Point USA, which is Charlie Kirk's organisation, and Turning Point UK does associate Charlie Kirk as being their founder too. So my criticisms are not going to be leveled at Charlie Kirk today, out of respect, but more towards Turning Point UK. And the fact is, Turning Point UK, they should really reflect on the situation. They should reflect on the fact that what becomes of the world when you do have such hostile positions towards opposing viewpoints, and the world descends into chaos like we're seeing. And this is by no means a justification of the shooting. That was absolutely abhorrent. But it's just like, we need to bring the conversation down a notch, and we need to, all members, all organizations, all viewpoints, whether religious, political, as speakers, we need to understand that the other side is human. And this is something I personally believe and practice what I preach. Like 2 weeks ago, when I was having the discussion with Turning Point UK, I was repeatedly emphasizing, not with Turning Point UK, sorry, an affiliate of Turning Point UK, who is prominently there with the spokesperson of Turning Point UK. I was repeatedly emphasizing the unity and the peaceful coexistence that Muslims and Christians had throughout the ages, even to the modern day. And for example, the most religious site in Christianity, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, that's the most religious site in Christianity, and the keys are held by a Muslim family, because the Christian side, there was too much division within Christianity. They couldn't agree how to deal with it, so then they passed it to a Muslim family. And the Muslims to this day hold the keys to the most holy site of Christianity, an example of peaceful coexistence there. So, what I'm trying to say is this sad event should be used as a wake-up call to, firstly, his organization, and to everyone, the danger of hostile rhetoric that, and how dangerous that is. So 2 weeks ago, this affiliate of Turning Point UK, he was mentioning that he doesn't believe in any anti-Muslim behavior. He doesn't believe it exists. He said he doesn't believe any Christians have ended Muslims. It doesn't exist. He was saying such dangerous rhetoric. And you've got to understand, this is in the context in the UK where we're having a massive far-right rally on the 13th of September. And what's going to happen at this rally? Individuals are going to be drunk. They're going to be out of their typical faculties. There's going to be group mentality, mob mentality. Who knows what can happen, right? And there actually have been a lot of hate crimes very recently. I'm not going to touch on them because they're so horrific in the UK. But they're towards ethnic minorities by members who are claiming to be associated with the far-right protests that are happening. I'm not saying they were associated, but I'm saying these individuals do feel like they've been influenced by people like the people who are leading the far-right protests. And I do believe that the majority of the attendees of the rally at the 13th of September, I do believe they're going to be, for the most part, self-controlled. And I don't believe they're going to go out senselessly attacking, for the most part. But having dangerous rhetoric like this from prominent, prominent speakers, in Speaker's Corner, it's very dangerous. And just think about it, like, what this person is he's not condemning attacks on elderly hijabi women who are walking down the street and they're having their hijab pulled off and they're being beaten by men. He doesn't believe that exists. So he doesn't believe that's wrong. So this is very dangerous rhetoric, and I do really strongly believe everyone needs to take it down a notch. And like I said, I've been practicing what I preach, but I really do believe that this opportunity, this man's passing, positive should come out of it. The fact that, a change should occur, that tone down of the rhetoric, because unfortunately we're seeing there's many admirable traits of Charlie Kirk. Like I mentioned, the fact that he was a family man, he practiced what he preached. He did look like, from what was apparent, it did look like he believed in what he was preaching. And those aspects are not being focused on as much as what I'm seeing, the negative. I'm not going to talk about Charlie Kirk, but the negative aspects of his organization, they're not being focused on and redeemed. The fact that it's very hostile language and dangerous language towards minorities, such as the Muslim population of these Western countries and such. So, I feel like they should really tone it down. They should realize that there's no reason why we can't have engaging, productive debates and discussions where we do disagree, but we disagree in a healthy, mannered, respectful way that the modern framework permits, and no need to hostilely call out the despicable talk that was happening a few weeks ago when I was talking, and the individual I was debating. I didn't want to debate him on anything because I knew what he's like, and he's a stoker of hatred, but I did want to call out his Islamophobia. And what he was debating, for example, was stuff like he believes that, what I mentioned, that Muslims, there's no persecution against Muslims, Christians don't end Muslim lives. Yeah, just horrific stuff. And yeah, I don't know, it just disgusts me that people like that are given a platform by certain communities, certain organizations, and this incident should really wake up the fact that when you're doing provocative rhetoric like this, like what, I'm not saying all the far left were like this, but like there was provocative rhetoric by the far left, and of course terrible members of that far left extremism did conduct what they'd conducted against Charlie Kirk. So this should really be a wake-up call on how dangerous rhetoric is, and a wake-up call on who you are really drumming up with the rhetoric you're doing. A call towards more peaceful rhetoric, more reasoned, sensible rhetoric, for certain speakers to be deplatformed and others to be brought up in communities based on their rhetoric. And yeah, I think especially, with the passing of this individual and who he was, his organization, his affiliated organization, should really reflect on the more admirable traits of his, like I mentioned, the fact that he was a family man and live by what they preach, because to me it was apparent that it looks like he did what he did, and a lot of members of his organizations don't practice what they preach. They're hypocrites, and I know that for a fact, that they all have girlfriends and this, that, the other. And on top of that, also they should build on his more admirable traits, like, for example, willingness to engage with the opposing side in, for the most part, respectful manner, and giving them a platform to disagree and discuss in that manner is more admirable traits they should be focusing on. Because right now, from what I see, Turning Point UK doesn't follow that respectful dialogue. It follows a more hostile dialogue. And yeah, I'm not saying every time he engaged, he was respectful, especially towards the Muslim community and the Islamic community. He was not. He was quite hostile, but this is not about that. This is more, like I mentioned, the more admirable traits are respect for the individual that passed. But yeah, I think his his organizations and the right wing in particular, and all of us, should reflect on this, being speakers and being people who have strong political, religious viewpoints, and reflect on this sad circumstance and really humanize the other side. Because at the end of the day, we all have family members, we all have friends who believe in our tradition, like religious traditions, for example, who really are good people, who practiced the rituals, the traditions that our religions believe in. We all know people who unfortunately passed away and really practiced what they preached and were good to us. And we should not be tainting their memories with the disgusting rhetoric of completely dehumanizing the other. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. And thank you all for listening. And I'll be interested to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. But yeah, Assalamu alaikum.